So, I know I'm really late to this party, but I recently finished The Umbrella Academy and decided to rant about its finale for a video. Strangely, compared to other seasons of television, the ending to Umbrella Academy had the cultural impact of a tiny puff of smoke, temporal and quickly forgotten. The audience reception was very much just, we're not mad, just disappointed. In a sense, it ended like a CW show, kind of, where there's suddenly a time skip and everyone ages by 5 to 8 years. Everyone's like kind of flanderized but mature still, and then something apocalyptic happens that causes a sacrifice, and instead of a satisfying conclusion, the creators are more invested in showing you the cast members leaving and ending the show on a everyone lived happily ever after note. The best way to TLDR the finale of The Umbrella Academy is to say that it's like seeing a friend from high school periodically over the course of a few years, and at your most recent meeting realizing that they've really gotten into like alpha male podcasts and red pill Twitter accounts, and you suddenly just lose all motivation to rekindle your friendship with them. I don't know if that makes any sense, but it makes sense in my head. And by watching this video, and by proxy the channel, you're in my head for the time being. So, to show how disastrous this was, I need to tell you to some extent what the first 3 seasons of The Umbrella Academy were like. I'll be honest, I wasn't as head over heels in love with this show as most people were. There were a few flaws that were honestly hard to ignore that were never really fixed in following seasons. To be complimentary, I thought the casting was phenomenal, the characters were really well written and distinct, plot was engaging, and I loved the drama. I'm a huge fan of Dark Academia, and though the show itself did not explore any of the themes that are usually associated with this genre, I really liked the style and the outfits, which were well designed and memorable. The relationships between the characters were also quite strong, and it was interesting to see how each of the siblings grew up and away from each other, and how they're trying to reconnect after being apart for so long. Season 1, without a doubt, was the best season, with every following season before the fourth just being a little bit worse. Also, I love the scene where Five killed all the Time Commission members. Just straight up best scene in the whole show, without a doubt. One of the things I wasn't a huge fan of, on the other hand, was the format. Since this was based off a comic book, it had a habit of just things happening chaotically, characters dealing with it, and as a result, there's no real connecting plot that ties everything together, like, say, Stranger Things. The storytelling is not very economized, and so it's akin to more of a pinball machine than a racing game, if that makes sense. And because of that, there were a lot of events that happen or character moments that happen where you're like, okay, that came out of nowhere. Or you see very clearly disposable characters that you know will be killed off for the main characters to be sad about. It's a bit predictable and annoyingly repetitive. I'm honestly surprised that never happened to the donut lady. She was prime for fridging, but she just made it to the end instead of my poor sexy handler. The character arcs were also a bit all over the place. It sometimes felt like it was just whatever the plot called for, and overall was kind of a mess. A chaotic and entertaining mess, but a mess nonetheless. I feel bad for Umbrella Academy watchers who came to this video wanting me to endlessly praise the show until the season 4 finale, but I'm sorry, I'm not gonna do that. I never really thought it was a perfect show. But even by my standards as someone who is a passive watcher, season 4 was astronomically bad. Unbelievably bad. Now, to provide some backstory here, Season 4 was agreed to be the final season. Everyone was excited to see how the stories of these beloved, well-established characters would end, and we were ready to let go of the siblings as they ride out into the sunset. This would have been the perfect season to just end everything. Wrap up storylines, character arcs, relationships that were developed in the past 3 seasons. It would be phenomenally embarrassing to screw it up in any way. Like, well and truly embarrassing. So let's talk about how it did end embarrassingly. Part 1. Why is there nothing happening? There is no real point to this season, which is impressive because as chaotic as the other seasons were, there was always a center to them. There was always a character kind of driving the plot forward, usually Five, so there was an anchor to all the madness. I think, outside of just how entertaining he is, the reason people liked Five so much was that he was very active. He was there to solve the mystery, to save everyone from whatever conflicts were there each season. So if you're someone who likes narrative and events, Five just usually became the most engaging storyline as opposed to whatever Diego was running his head into that season. So in season 1, we had an apocalypse they had to prevent. In season 2, we had an apocalypse they had to prevent. And in season 3, uniquely, we had an apocalypse they had to prevent. Now, as repetitive as the apocalypse was as a conflict, it did its intended job, which was to tie the separated characters together to do the fun action fights and funny banter. Its purpose was simple but effective and worked great for the short seasons. Normally, the start of a season would be everyone being mostly in limbo and not much happening, and then certain things will start going wrong, usually noticed by Five, and then this thread will be followed through to set up for the finale of that season. In season 4, there is no center. There's a time skip of 7 years where everybody has been living their lives with pretty much no no issue. So no matter how you write the apocalypse this season, it will feel forced, and is forced. The apocalypse manifests in not only such a stupidly preventable way, but it's also only an issue in the final episode. Until then, we're dealing with Nick Offerman and his wife having a cult about the previous timeline, as if these guys are any sort of threat against seven superpowered trained adults. Like, ignoring the apocalypse for a second, are we really taking these dumbasses seriously? Are we really going to cower in fear over these weirdos wanting to facilitate an apocalypse? What harm are they causing outside of just being insane extremists? This season feels like it's stalling so hard, as if it's trying to make you turn the show off. Part 2, The Elephant in the Room. I feel like people probably want me to talk about this the most, so I'll just get it out of the way. Lila was always a bit of an outsider character. To people who don't know, Lila Pitts, or Hargreaves, is kind of part of the Umbrella Academy and joins in season 2. Her whole shtick is that she's British, and since her superpower is being able to replicate the powers of others, she's pretty much one of the strongest characters in the show. She also has a character arc in season 2 where she's trying to murder Five because he murdered her parents when he was an assassin, but turns out the person who called the order for them to be killed was this sexy lady, the handler, her adoptive mother. And after that, she's just permanently part of the crew as a zany addition. And I really liked this arc. The emotions were great, the climax to season 2 was really good, and it ended well. The thing about Lila is that, like the other members of the Umbrella Academy, it's kind of obvious the writers didn't really know what to do with her afterwards. She had her big moment and change, so what do we do with her now? And so they gave her a romance like they do with every other character in the show. You'll notice that when the writers don't know what to do with a character, they will usually give them a romance out of nowhere, and it's usually not written particularly well. Does anyone remember the guy Allison married? I think his name was Macadamia. Or Victor's thing with Sheldon Cooper's mom. Or this lady. I'm kidding. I know it's Sloane, but she legitimately could have dropped dead in the middle of her and Luther's wedding, and I wouldn't have batted an eye. So the romance they gave her was with resident himbo Diego. They had a cute thing that developed over the course of 2 seasons, and I'm willing to say that they even had the best romance in the show next to Klaus and Evil Ben. But impressively, there was an actual guy who existed at the writer's table who raised their hand and had the courage to suggest that Lila have an affair with Five in season 4. And all the other people in the table were like, yeah, that's a great direction for the 4th season. Let's suddenly and out of nowhere destroy an already existing relationship for the sake of a romance with Five, the man who murdered her parents and who she has only ever seen in the body of a 12-year-old. Now, from a writing perspective, I kind of understand why this idiot at the writer's table suggested this. Five was essentially the face of the Umbrella Academy. One of the first things newcomers heard about the Umbrella Academy was the name Five. He was one of the most intelligent characters, was a planner, a schemer, and no matter what the goal is, he will go to great and morally ambiguous lengths to complete it. He was a grumpy piece of shit, but he got things done even if it was at the behest of others, and the only thing that ruined his plans were his siblings who he couldn't control and were the constant chaotic elements in his life. He knows that if they didn't exist, his life would probably be a lot easier, but he loves them and wants to be near people who are his family after being separated from them for 60 plus years. He was also a hermit. He found it difficult to actually let people in. His most long-term relationship was a romance with a mannequin, essentially an imaginary friend, which, while hilarious, also shows how his time spent in the apocalypse had truly separated him from humanity and society. So when you have this iconic character, and you have the chance to age him up in the finale by 7 years because the actor finally hit puberty, what else can we do besides turn him into a sexy dreamboat? He's not 5 anymore, ladies. Now he's 10. So bad. What about we neuter his personality so he's no longer as energetic as he used to be, and have him be just a little more boring? You know, like a hero in an action flick. Everything about Five and Lila reminds me of that Jenny Nicholson quote where she was like, "This is fiction," and the writers could have written anything else, because they really could have in the situation. They didn't have to make them cheat. They didn't have to have Lila have a lot more stakes in the situation, since she has a whole family with children and relatives. They didn't need to do a 7-year time skip so they can make Five and Lila work age-wise. They could have just made Lila and Diego break up before they had a family, or done anything to make it a little more bearable to watch, but no. It's so cool and dark, man. Look how adult the show is now. Also, this version of Five seems like he was made to be in like Sigma fan cams with a narration of Andrew Tate quotes over videos of him being in epic action scenes. Like fan cams of cool quotes he said with AI motion frames over it. I don't know why, but so much of the zaniness and appeal of Five is ripped away to make him essentially a bored jock, which is crazy. You can really feel the shift in the fourth season. It's impossible to ignore. The change that Five goes through actually reflects the whole show in season 4. A desire to normalize it, to make it like a Marvel movie or action hero movie almost. The cartoony aspects of the show are remnants that crawl back into this world, as if to remind you of what you've lost this season. The Time Commission was one of the best world building aspects of the show, and in season 4, it's entirely eliminated, and all the characters who worked there are barely mentioned, including my sexy queen, the Handler. In season 4, we instead focus on the FBI, which replaces the Time Commission. It's boring, dreary, and the characters ogle it like it's the coolest thing they've ever seen, even though the FBI sucks. Umbrella Academy is actually a little unique from other shows because I think the earlier seasons were a lot more outlandish, and then as the writers' room got shuffled, a lot more writers who preferred grounded and real stories came by, and kind of shifted what made the show so beloved in the first place. In total, my ranting aside, Five and Lila were absolutely a terrible idea. There's no denying it. They managed to squeeze past the it wasn't an affair thing by having Lila just randomly break up with Diego for a bit and they never talk about it again. It's so stupid. Whatever idiot raised their hand should just stick to writing fan fiction, I'll be honest. It doesn't matter if they have chemistry or whatever, or if they made sense or not, because ultimately, it's incredibly stupid to have one of your most beloved characters cheat in the final season and suffer no consequences for it. Maintaining the existence of his family has always been Five's core motivation. It is an unchangeable aspect of his character. So to have this romance with his brother's wife and intentionally elongating it is beyond bad writing. It's apocalyptic writing. Can I copyright that? I thought that sounded cool. You're nosediving one of the best characters in the show for cheap drama. And the worst part is, it isn't even written well. It almost stumbles into so bad it's good. There were times where I felt like I was watching Gossip Girl or something. There's a scene towards the end where Lila and Five go to meet up with Diego, and after putting us through their entire romance montage, they have the audacity to give us a "you can't give her what she needs" speech from Five. And I felt like I was losing my mind. This was the same show where a hot gil swallowed a goldfish, and you expect us to be invested in one of the most cliche love triangle speeches in television history? I bet what everyone was thinking when they made it to that scene was like, thank God I didn't get invested in this romance because I feel a little stupid right now. This conflict is also left completely unfinished, which is crazy because the show had the audacity to spend so much time on it as if we would care. Five and Diego fight over Lila, and you sit there not giving even a single moment of attention, and then Lila chooses Diego. Obviously, because they've been married for 5 years and have kids, and then Five just blinks away to mope about it. What person was so into this ship that they decided to completely dismantle the climax of the show that Five has always been a part of? Like, what were you thinking? Part 3. Everyone sucks now. So, the themes of the Umbrella Academy have always been consistent. I can say a lot of things about the show, but one thing I can't deny is that at its core is its theme of found family and finding your place in a society that seeks to alienate you. It's compelling and explored really well. You can write a million different types of essays about that in a million different styles. Especially in season 1, there's a lot of overcoming abuse, trauma, finding people in times of distress, things like that. And this carries over to the second season and the third as well. In season 4, these themes are overshadowed for the sake of edgy misery. Was Klaus your favorite character next to Five? Well, we're going to make him go through literal hell by having him be trafficked for his powers, and then buried in a grave for days until Allison comes to save him, and he realizes that family is the most important thing in life after all. His storyline is being tortured and taken advantage of, and it's not funny a single time. It's unbearable and incredibly unnecessary. His arc this season starts with him obsessively safe-proofing everything in his life after losing his ability to return from the dead. And you might think, oh, interesting. This season he's going to ease out a bit and maybe accept his mortality. But no. He's tortured, proving his neuroticism correct, and not only that, he gets his powers back, which entirely removes any growth his character might have had. And also, his escapades prove Allison right when she said that he's being a leech off of her. The only reason I can imagine they put Klaus through this is that I have to assume that they just wanted to torture Klaus, and that's it. That they thought it would be dark comedy, or like just edgy for the sake of being edgy. What a great position to put your other queer character in the final season. Man, it seems like all your anxieties about the world are right, Klaus. If you are an oddity, everyone will just want to take advantage of you and bury you alive in a coffin. Ben also doesn't get any better. They pair him up with this squid girl, I couldn't care less about her. I can't believe they didn't notice the gold mine that was pairing evil Ben and Klaus this season. God, they're stupid. Luther is also completely lost this season. Luther's arc over the course of the first 2 seasons was realizing that his life was a lie. He's always been a slave to authority, and he was slowly finding his individuality in the world and the kind of person he wanted to be. I didn't really like the person he became, especially since it was because of him that I had to watch the most boring wedding and relationship in the universe. But it was like, a growth moment for his character. Luther is mainly a punchline this season, reduced to a himbo like Diego, and even gets paired up with Diego. And you would think that having two hot himbos would be like comedy gold or something, or at the very least entertaining, but I've never used the right arrow button on my laptop more in my life. It's like having two Diegos. Their dialogue felt basically interchangeable this season. Allison, I think, got it the worst. The thing about Allison is that she was honestly never written well because I don't think any of the writers really figured out her character. To explain, Allison was always considered the most well-adjusted member of the Umbrella Academy, and her superpower is the ability to whisper, which is just mind control. The power she never uses well because it's so obviously overpowered that they have to leave it for only conveniently dramatic moments. After she grew up, she became a successful actress, had a husband and child, and had mostly left everything to do with the Umbrella Academy behind. When she returns in the first season for Reginald's funeral, she stays for the mourning period, but it's clear she also wants to find connection with her previous family again. She tries her darndest to mend her relationship with Victor, reconnect with Luther, and Pogo as well. By the way, I hate Pogo. I might explain my hatred for Pogo in this video or not, but I just want to let you know I never liked Pogo and actually laughed when he died. Returning to Allison, in season 2, Allison is thrown into a racist world that doesn't accept her and finds community with black activists. The storyline is interesting, not amazingly well done, but interesting. She's constantly tempted to use her powers to fight against the world that hates her and her people, and does use her powers. But again, this is another situation where they set up an interesting internal conflict and never deliver because I really don't think the writers cared or knew what to do with Allison. Ultimately, this storyline in season 2 is to show that Allison is returning to her habit of finding her own happiness away from her family to move on. In season 3, Allison becomes Dark Allison, and it half makes sense, half doesn't. She makes a deal with Reginald to reset the universe to exactly what she wants, which is a world where her husband and child still exist, and that's it, I guess? Of all the characters they chose to give a villain arc, I can't believe they didn't consider Victor or Evil Ben. Either one would have been perfect for it. Allison was a stupid choice, because it's clear they didn't really want to address or dig into her flaws or the worrying implications of her powers. After Allison does this huge betrayal in season 3, in season 4, she doesn't feel any guilt for her actions and is welcomed back into the group like a sad rabbit that ran away, and everyone should now accept. And it's really dumb. Instead of trying for an interesting villain to hero arc with Allison this season, they blow it aside to focus on stupid, horny motel sessions between Ben and Squid Girl. Allison is a background character this season. The only thing she does is save Klaus from a coffin, and never once grapples with any of the awful things she did. She doesn't confront it, the show doesn't confront it, so the task is left up to the viewer, who inevitably hates her. And it leaves the show with a pathetic and kind of bitchy character and a bad taste in your mouth. So I never liked Victor, but this is just a me thing. I never liked him in season 1. I found him to be a very cowardly character with no personality, and it never improved throughout the seasons. I wish my opinion of him changed, but it was always apathetic ambivalence, and I don't remember a single thing he did this season outside of owning a bar. Part 4. The End. The end of the Umbrella Academy has already been talked about ad nauseum, so here's the rundown. At the end of the 3rd season, the world is rebooted to Allison's specifications and everyone loses their powers. The 4th season has a time skip where everyone's living normal lives, but they're given a chance to get their powers back by drinking this yellow sludge called marigold. Everyone wants time to think about getting their powers back, or don't want it at all, except for Ben. And in a very obvious scene and a stupid move by Ben, he spikes the drinks so they have no choice in the matter but get their powers back anyway. By the way, I don't get why Ben didn't just drink all the marigold himself. They know it's the source of their powers. He's evil Ben. It makes so much more sense to do that instead of inexplicably forcing his siblings to drink it. Anyway, moving on to the finale of season 4. Five goes to this admittedly cool coffee shop with other fives who have given up on saving the universe, and realize that the only way to stop the apocalypses that keep happening is by getting rid of his siblings and himself. It's not the powers, which they could have very easily written around and just have them without their powers, but they themselves cannot exist for the world to exist. Oh boy. Okay, let's talk about how this does not work on 2 levels. First is within the logic of the show. They have been living perfectly fine for the last 7 years as humans with no issue. Clearly, the world is fine with them being there. It's the marigold, or whatever it is that is actually causing the problems. Second is thematically. We've been told over and over again that all the students of the Umbrella Academy want is to move on. They want to live normal lives, they want to forget about the abuses of their father and be happy. And to be told that they must die in the end for a world that never accepted them struggling to survive is such a horrendous ending that you can't help but wonder if they knew what they were doing in the first place at all. The final shot of all the dead siblings as marigold flowers swaying in the breeze is not idyllic or beautiful. It's just depressing. And it's insane that the show itself doesn't seem to recognize it as the buttery voiced narrator returns and a gentle tune starts playing. I really like exaggerating in my videos, but this is not an exaggeration. I legitimately can't imagine a worse way to end the show than the siblings accepting that they don't belong in the universe they've attempted to save numerous times, essentially commit mass suicide, and are forgotten by every person who remotely cared about them. My final thoughts. See, I can write a short video. I just need a day or two, and to get not too invested in the topic. That happens every now and then. I'm still overall nonplussed about my experience with the show. I'm glad I watched it. It was leagues better than The Mentalist, which I also watched recently, but strangely I enjoyed The Mentalist more. Subjectivity wins again, I guess. The show reminds me a lot of Lucifer, I think. They're both in that area of zany supernatural media with fun lore and cartoony characters, but this show was more fun than Lucifer. Lucifer was so damn repetitive. And now I'm ranting. This is a very short final thoughts. I wanted to find interesting video essays to talk about it, but like I said, Tiny Puff of Smoke. The only video I enjoyed was the one by Amanda the Jedi. So let me add my video to the pile for funsies. Anyway, I'll see you later. Follow me on Patreon. That would be very helpful. Subscribe, comment. I would love to hear your thoughts about how much you hate me and you wish I died because I didn't like the show as much as you did. Bye.
Istanbul was Constantinople, now it's Istanbul. Not Constantinople, been a long time gone. Constantinople, why did Constantinople get the works? That's nobody's business but the turn.